Hello, in this video, I'm going to walk you through setting up Xero Payroll from the very beginning, step by step in the right order. Payroll isn't just admin. You are dealing with people's wages, tax obligation, and superannuation, so it makes perfect sense to feel cautious. Payroll is one of those areas where the setup is the actual work. But here's the good news. Running payroll in Xero is actually quite easy once you understand its structure and the logic behind it. But I want to say this to you up front. Your payroll results will always reflect the quality of your setup. If the foundation is solid, everything that follows stays clean and correct. If it isn't, the pay runs might go through, but the journals, the liabilities, and the reporting won't make sense at all, and cleaning up that later is painful and time-consuming. So let's take our time and set it up properly from the start. When you open Xero Payroll for the very first time, you'll land on a setup page. Xero uses this to explain how payroll works in Xero and the steps you'll need to follow. There are also some frequently asked questions and support links if you want to explore further. When you're ready, go ahead and click Set up Payroll. First, there are a couple of quick questions about your organization. How many employees do you have? Select the relevant range. I will choose 1 to 4 here. Then you'll be asked whether you're migrating from another payroll system. If you're starting fresh, which is what we are doing today here, select no. But if you are moving across from another system, you'd select yes, and there may be some additional guidance for you along the way. Then your experience. Based on your answer, Xero might personalize the setup screens and the instructions for you. Click through to continue. Now we reach the first key decision. Xero is asking you to set your pay calendar, which simply defines how often you run payroll. Your options are available in the drop-down. In Australia, the most common frequencies are weekly, fortnightly, or monthly. Choose what genuinely reflects how you pay your team. If you pay different groups of employees at different frequencies, for example, some weekly and some monthly, you can create multiple pay calendars and assign employees to their respective calendar. For now, we'll set up only one pay calendar. Next, give the pay calendar a clear and practical name. Fortnightly pay is perfectly fine for me. Now set the start date. This marks the beginning of your first pay period. One important point here, whatever date you set here in this pay calendar, you cannot run a pay run dated earlier than this start date. So don't choose a future date if you need to process payroll now, and don't choose a past date unless you intend to back process pay runs for those periods. Next, set your payment date. This is the actual date employees will be paid. In our example, it's the last Friday of the fortnight. This date does matter. Payment date is not just an administrative feature in Xero. In payroll, the payment date drives the accounting. It determines when the payroll journal is posted in your accounts. That is the date when the wages hit your profit and loss and the payables cut into your balance sheet. Plus your superannuation obligations and STP reporting are also tied to this date. Take a moment to review the summary screen. Confirm the details and click Next. Your first payroll calendar is now created. This is the framework everything else will sit on. The next step is mapping your payroll to the correct accounts in Xero. This is where many users unintentionally create problems, so we are going to slow down a little bit here. First, select the bank account from which wages will be paid. When you open the drop-down, all connected bank accounts will appear. If you're paying the wages via ABA files, this selection must be correct. The ABA file pulls its bank details from here. If the wrong bank account is selected, payments can fail or be rejected. Now we move to the most important distinction in payroll accounting: expense versus liability. This is the most commonly misunderstood concept in payroll, and one of the biggest reasons people end up with duplicated wage expenses in their profit and loss statement. When you process a pay run in Xero, two things happen simultaneously in your accounts. First, Xero records the wage expense. This is the cost to the business, the wages, superannuation, and related payroll costs. These appear in your profit and loss statement for that period. And second, Xero records the liability. These represent what the business now owes and hasn't yet paid. That includes the net wages owed to the employee, the PAYG withholding owed to the ATO, and the superannuation owed to the employee's funds. Now here's the key. When you actually pay the employee or the ATO or the super fund, you are not creating a new expense. The expense was already recorded when you ran the pay run in the first place. You are only clearing a liability. And this is where many people go wrong. When they process payment through bank reconciliation, they reconcile the wage payment against the wage expense account, effectively recording the expense twice. That's how duplicate wage lines appear in the profit and loss, and liabilities remain recorded in the balance sheet despite payment. So if you remember nothing else from this section, remember this. When you run the pay run, you create the expense and the liability. When you make the payment of the wages, tax, and super, you are paying off that liability. If you understand that, payroll suddenly becomes much less confusing. Okay, I think I made my point here, so let's go back to the setup. Xero will suggest the appropriate accounts from the chart of accounts. PAYG withholding, wages payable, and superannuation payable on the liability side, and wages and salaries expense and superannuation expense on the expense side. In most cases, the predefined suggestions are correct. If you are using a customized chart of accounts, select the appropriate accounts from the drop-down. Just make sure you're not mixing expenses with liability accounts. Review the account carefully and confirm them. Your payroll accounts are now correctly mapped. You will be taken back to the payroll overview. You will see the pay calendar and payroll accounts are complete, but organization details is still showing as incomplete. And that's our next step. The ATO requires specific information to be included in every single touch payroll submission. Therefore, Xero needs these details to be filled in correctly before you can report payroll to the ATO. Click Add Organization Details and check that the ABN, the legal trading name, postal address, and phone number are present and accurate. It sounds rather straightforward. Fill in anything that is incomplete, save it, and then head back to the payroll setup. As you can see, the core setup is done. Now it's time to add your first employee. Honestly, this is where payroll becomes real. When you click Add Employee, you begin with the basic personal details. At a minimum, enter the full name, date of birth, residential address, and gender. Once you hit Save, the full employee file is generated and all remaining tabs become available. Setting up an employee is about working through each tab and understanding what each setting controls. In this video, I'll focus on the essential settings only. If you'd like a much deeper breakdown, including timesheets, awards, various salary structures, leave entitlements, and so on, I'm currently preparing a full Xero payroll training program. You can join the waitlist via the link below. Now let's move through the critical tabs. The Employment tab determines how this employee is classified and reported. First, select the employment type. In most cases, you will choose Employee. Next, the income type. This setting directly affects single-touch payroll reporting. For most employees, select Salary and Wages. Then choose the employment basis, full-time, part-time, or casual. This must align with the employment contract. Enter the start date according to the contract. Then you can enter an award classification for reference, but currently Xero doesn't automatically adjust pay rates based on these settings. Next, assign the employee to the correct pay calendar. If this employee is paid differently from others, you must create a separate pay calendar first and then return and assign that. The holiday group is more important than most people realize. Public holidays differ by state in Australia. Assigning the correct state ensures public holidays are treated properly on the payslip and annual leave is not incorrectly deducted. One tip, save frequently. You can save multiple times during setup and always save before moving to the next step. Let's set the ordinary earning rate. This is needed for STP as well. And finally, the superannuation. Before assigning a superfund to the employee, the fund must exist in Xero. Xero doesn't automatically list every superannuation fund. You must add the superfunds of your employees as required. If the employee has a self-managed superfund or SMSF, you must enter the fund name, ABN, electronic service address, and the bank account details. If the employee has a regulated superfund, search for it by name or USI code and add it. Once the superannuation fund is added, return to the employee file and on the Employment tab, select the superfund under the Superannuation Membership section and enter the membership number exactly as shown on the employee's superannuation choice form. If the membership number is wrong, the payment will bounce back. Then hit Save. The Tax tab is based entirely on the employee's TFN declaration form. Enter the tax file number exactly as provided. If a TFN hasn't been supplied, select the appropriate exemption reason. Then confirm the tax residency status, tax scale, that is regular in most of the cases, whether they have a study or training support loan, whether they are claiming the tax-free threshold, any applicable offsets, and whether leave loading applies. These settings directly determine how PAYG withholding is calculated. And remember, with single-touch payroll, this information is automatically reported to the ATO when you process the first pay run. There is no separate TFN declaration submission required anymore. Therefore, accuracy here is critical. Don't forget to save it. Then, on the Leave tab, assign leave entitlements that must match what's in the employment contract. You can apply default leave types or assign leave categories individually. Typically, annual leave and personal leave need to be added. Open each leave type and confirm the accrual settings align with the employment agreement. Adjust as required. Leave settings affect accrual calculations, balances, and termination payout. Then we can move on to the Bank Accounts tab. Enter the employee's bank account details, account name, BSB, and account number. If you're paying wages via ABA files, these details are what Xero will use to direct the payment. Please double-check these information carefully. Employees can split payments across up to 4 accounts. Currently, splits are dollar-based, not percentage-based. For example, a fixed amount, say $250 to one account, with the remaining balance going to the primary account. Save once complete. Now the pay template, the heart of how the employee is paid. Basically, you need to create a pay template that will form the basis of every pay run moving forward. So click Add Earnings line and choose the pay items. For most employees, you'll start with ordinary hours. Choose whether they are paid hourly or by annual salary. If it's a salary, enter the annual amount and the standard working hours per week, typically 38 hours for a full-time employee, though this can vary depending on the award and the agreement. This also ensures leave and other entitlements calculate correctly. If the employee has any deductions, add those here too. Then add the superannuation line. First, select the employee's superfund, set the contribution type. Primarily, it will be statutory rate. If employee requested, you can add the salary sacrifice the same way, just choose pre-tax voluntary contribution here. Then choose the payment frequency. From 1st July 2026, Payday Super will change this process in Australia, but for now, choose what reflects your current practice. Reimbursement, allowances, and mileage payments can also be added if relevant. Then save, and we are ready with the pay template. The last two tabs, opening balances and notes, are situational. If you are mid-year and this employee has had payroll processed elsewhere before moving into this Xero file, you will use opening balances to enter their year-to-date figures so your reporting stays accurate. For a brand new file or a new employee, this usually remains empty. Notes are for recording major changes, events for audit purposes. So to sum up this section, when setting up an employee, you are defining how they are reported to the ATO, which pay cycle they belong to, how their wage is calculated, how they are taxed, how they accrue leave, and where their super is paid. Once this is done properly, running payroll becomes really straightforward. And now your employee is ready for their first pay run. We are nearly there. The final step is compliance, connecting Xero to ATO to be able to do single-touch payroll. Single Touch Payroll, or STP, is compulsory in Australia. It means that on or before each payment date, payroll data must be reported directly to the ATO. If you're running payroll in Xero, the most efficient way to do this is to connect Xero directly to the ATO so that STP reporting is just a click of a button at the end of each pay run. So let's do the opt-in. We start by reviewing the organization details again. These data will be transmitted with every STP submission, so make sure they are correct. If you are not migrating historical payroll data, you can just continue. Next, you need to register your payroll software with the ATO. There are two ways to do that. First, call the ATO, identify yourself, and give them the software ID shown on your screen. They'll register it for you. Or the other way is to use the Access Manager portal. For this, log in with your MyGov ID through the link on the screen, select your business, and navigate to My Hosted Software Services menu on the left. As you can see, I am already connected to Xero, so I just click on the line and add the software ID. If it's the first time you add Xero, click Notify ATO of your hosted service button, then choose Xero as a provider and enter the software ID and save. Once that's done, come back to Xero, confirm that you have registered, and that completes the STP setup. Your Xero payroll is now fully set up. Let's quickly recap what we have done. First, we created the pay calendar, defining when and how often payroll runs. Then we mapped the payroll accounts correctly, separating expenses from liabilities. Then we confirmed the organization details, so your STP reporting meets ATO requirements. Then we set up your first employee properly with their employment, tax, super, banking, and pay template details. And lastly, we connected Single Touch Payroll so reporting flows directly from Xero to the ATO with every pay run. This is how payroll is structured properly. This is a very solid foundation. And when payroll is structured properly, everything that follows, the accounting, the expenses and liabilities, the reporting, stays aligned. And now you are ready to process your first pay run in Xero with confidence. And if you'd like to go deeper and truly understand the mechanics behind Xero Payroll, I'm currently building a complete payroll course where we unpack the ins and outs of Xero Payroll, from timesheets, awards, salary structures, super nuances, and real-world scenarios. You can join the waitlist via the link below. And if this video helped you, subscribe for more practical Xero guidance. And remember, set it up correctly and everything else gets easier. I'll see you in the next one.